Hi everybody, Adrian Plass here,
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
and it's day 41.
Yes, it is.
Now you may remember that before we reached our amazing 40th anniversary,
Of these
um,
recordings, you
yes, of these
understand.
recordings, we did wonder if people might give us a ruby, somebody. And somebody did, you probably know. It was a picture of Ruby
Yeah,
Wax.
it really
So,
made your day, didn't it,
yes,
Adrian? I don't
just
think.
what I wanted. Thank you. And also there was, and we did mention that yesterday, I think. And there was also a little poem which was lovely. And at one point in the poem, it was a very encouraging poem. But
Yeah.
I'll just read you one of the couplets in it. And this is a reference to a number of rural sayings that I have been helpfully offering to people. And these are the immortal words that this person has written. The rural wisdom they insert in their chronicles brings to my mind the great William McGonagall.
Yeah, and for those who have no idea who that is,
Well, William McGonagall was a Scotsman who wrote some of the best dreadful poetry. I mean, so bad that it's always readable in the history of bad poetry, really.
and he became very famous for doing it,
He
didn't he?
did indeed, amazingly become very famous. Now, something else I need to say is that after we'd recorded our last piece, I talked about a journey I made. Now, I know there'll be people out there sharpening their laptops in order to tell me that I have lost my mind and travel in the way that I've described it simply does not happen in the south of England. All right, now here's how the journey really was. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, you can go back and listen to the last one. But this is how it actually was, right? The journey was not to Portsmouth, it was to Southampton, right? And when I got there, the girl in the office said change at Hove. The notice board on the platform said change at Worthing. The man on the end of the platform said change at Portsmouth, and a man pushing a trolley on the platform said change at Havant. That is the truth. I got on the train. The man who came along to inspect the tickets said I should go upstairs when I asked where I should change. And when I got to Portsmouth, I found that I went upstairs, changed trains, and eventually arrived at Southampton. So I hope you've got that, because that is the accurate one. And I don't want to hear any more about it, because after I'd done it, I felt a complete idiot.
Well, you got through that at an incredible rate. I think less than a minute. What else can you do in a minute,
Oh,
Adrian?
an awful lot. Have a listen to this. In 1 minute, I can boil 2/9 of an egg. In 1 minute, I can ring a friend for the best of all possible reasons. No reason at all. In 1 minute, as long as I'm not guilty of hesitation, repetition, or deviation, I can win points on just a minute. In 1 minute, after hearing the doorbell ring, I can, with a 60-second burst of explosive activity, turn my study into a room that looks pleasantly untidy on the surface, but basically well organized. In 1 minute, I can make promises to God and mankind that will commit me to another human being for anything up to 60 years. Mm-hmm. In 1 minute, I can watch 59.5 minutes more of Big Brother than I shall ever want to see in this world or the next or anywhere else. In 1 minute, I can find my newspaper, lose my glasses, find my glasses, lose my newspaper, put the kettle on, find my newspaper and my glasses, sit down with my newspaper and glasses, and wonder why the kettle's boiling. In 1 minute, when a late film that I want to watch is about to begin, I can pray for my family, my church, the church all over this country, the church worldwide, the Queen, our government, everyone else's government, the poor, the rich, the lost, the saved, and anybody else who comes to mind. Quite often I have a few seconds to spare at the end, which is useful if I need to put a snack ready before the film starts. In 1 minute, I can waste 1 minute. In 1 minute, I can be forgiven 490 times or more. In 1 minute, I can read this poem. Actually, I've just looked at my watch. I've gone over the minute.
So I think that more than makes up for your getting your journey wrong, really, Adrian. That's
Well,
a
I
heck of a
hope
lot of
so.
things to do in a minute.
I hope so.
Time has become really strange, hasn't it? I think it has. I mean, there's a whole section of the world, actually, for whom there isn't enough time. They're doing double shifts, they're exhausted, they would love to have a day off.
Yeah.
And then for another whole section of the world, including us, there's an enormous amount of time, more than there ever has been, I think. It's really strange. You get up in the morning and you think, another whole day of time to fill.
It is a strange difference. And we know an anaesthetist, or we've heard about one, who working double shifts.
Exactly.
That was quite amazing. And yet, I mean, we have our Zoom church, don't we, on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. And we're very often almost late for it, aren't we? I mean, it just shrinks down. So about 4 minutes before it's due to start, we say, we've only got 4 minutes before church. And of course, you can be in your pyjama trousers if you need to be. But yeah, it is extraordinary. It is extraordinary. Yeah. And I have to say, I mean, time flies in the morning for us. It really does, actually. And one of the things that has amused us is that every day, and it really is pretty well every day at some point, not Jesus, Bridget. I knew it was someone like Bridget. Bridget says, I love the idea that Jesus says the same thing here every day. Bridget says, I can't believe it, it's 12 o'clock. And that's every day. What's going on?
It is.
How
it
did
is.
Jesus creep in there?
I have no idea. I really have no idea. I really haven't. You know, this business of the fact that so many of us, however near to the church we live, often do arrive late, really tripped me up once. I think we mentioned the other day about being in Zambia at one point. We were looking at work being done by World Vision with one particular village for most of the time, actually, and how they were battling against AIDS, which was decimating this village. I mean, we talk about these deaths. Well, the whole parent age, the sort of 20s to 40s, had almost been removed in this village, and it was an extraordinary time. Well, we went to church on Sunday, which was an absolute delight. I mean, these people are up against it in a way that we're just beginning to understand.
I think
now,
that was
maybe
one of
a little bit.
The high points of our experience, wasn't it?
It was extraordinary. It was a funny little old building cram full of people. There was an enormous amount of coughing going on. A lot of people looked very, very poorly. But the joy in that place was incredible. But people were coming into the service at any old time, really. Sometimes arriving quarter of an hour late, half an hour late, some arriving just before the end of it. And afterwards, the pastor looked a bit crestfallen because it was being filmed, and therefore it was an important day for him. And he said, I am so sorry, he said, that so many of our people are late. Well, I wanted to reassure him, and I said, oh, don't worry about that. I said, in the UK, loads of people turn up late for church. And he said, oh, now I thought everyone in the UK had a clock. And I was so mortified. Yeah.
Well, there you are. I remember, it did amuse me in Zambia, I think it was in the capital city, seeing a church which was called St. Michael, the Church of St. Michael and All Angles. And I thought, we've got a few of them in our high streets in Great Britain.
Well, sticking with this time thing, Adrian and I have been talking about whether it's ever okay to just waste time. And we were thinking about the fact that Jesus did sometimes do exactly that.
He was very good at wasting time.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a matter of perspective. But it would have seemed to the people with him, I'm quite sure, that he was simply wasting time.
Well, or certainly that he didn't have any urgency about anything. I mean, the first one we were thinking about was when he was on his way to the home of Jairus. And if you remember, Jairus, very, very important man, his little girl, very, very poorly, called on Jesus, actually came and knelt down in the road and said to Jesus, please come, my little girl is dying. So off they go. They know where they're going. They know how urgent it is. And yet, when something happens on the way, Jesus takes a huge amount of time. This woman, if you remember, touches the robe of his cloak, and she's had this issue of blood. We don't know much about her except that she's been ill for years, and because of this particular illness, she can't go into the temple. Well, she touches his robe, And Jesus stops and says, something has happened. I felt something go out from me. Now, she was healed. Fine. He could have just kept going. There was a true urgency about this journey. But no, he stops. He calls her out. He wants everyone to see that she is in fact healed. She is clean, so she can go to the temple. She is forgiven for anything she needs forgiving for. And she is whole. And of course, by the time he gets there, the little girl is dead.
Mm. So I imagine the disciples, they would at first, I'm sure, have wanted to say, look, this is an important man.
Yeah.
His daughter is dying. Are we not going to go? And you're wasting so much time with this woman. And then they hear that she's dead, and maybe they say, told you she's dead. And we all know what happened after that. Jesus said, she's asleep. And it's one of the moments in the New Testament that is in my heart, where he got there and he said she's sleeping, and they laughed at him. They laughed at him, and he was going to go in, take her hand, and stand her up, and she lived. Wonderful story.
And clearly for Jesus, what was important at that time with the woman, and I'm sure he knew what would happen when he got to Jairus, one of the important things was that woman was just as important as Jairus and Jairus' daughter. She was a nobody. She was rejected. She hadn't been able to go to the temple. She was unclean. But she became the most important person. And that's why he never did any straight lines, did he? He never went anywhere, just straight through.
It's very, very difficult for church leaders sometimes, and any of us, people who call ourselves Christians, to really get our heads around the fact that the little woman you meet on the Friday bus, or whoever it is the most important person in the world. There are a lot of losers in the church, people who fail over and over and over again, and they're annoying because they spoil the game.
And they're the heroes because they're hanging on by a thread, aren't they?
And it is a thread.
Yeah.
And we jolly well have a responsibility to look after them
and this is one of the times when we have time to really think, who are those people? Because so often we're rushing around trying to do things and organise things, and those people don't come to our minds.
No, they don't. And I was thinking also very briefly of the Samaritan woman, where Jesus has had a long, hot walk, and he sent the disciples off to get food in the local city. And
well, you always thought he was rather...
Well, I always wondered why he sent 12 of them to go shopping. I think he might have thought, I think I've had just enough of the 12 of them for a little while.
Just like a little break.
I'm going to sit by this well, and I'm going to pretend I'm not the Son of God. And this lady comes and sits opposite him, and I always imagine Jesus looks at her and he thinks, oh, it's a job. It's a job. And then, as usual, he knows she's the most important person in the world. And the result of it for her is wonderful. And for him, it's the most amazing celebratory speech at that point, because suddenly it's all happening for him. And that's the result of sitting there and taking notice of this lady when she comes.
And actually, he then stays 3 days, doesn't he? And he's on his way somewhere else. But 3 days he stays because he wants to make sure that the job is complete. And actually, that story is terribly important to both of us, isn't it? Because it was a sort of moment of realization. We talk so much about what is feeding us, whether it's the sermon has fed us, or the music has fed us, or the worship, and we don't feel quite so fed now because we're not all together. And we realized, didn't we, that when the disciples asked him, what is your food, what keeps you going?
They came back with the food.
Oh, that's right.
And they said to him, we brought the food. And he said, I don't need this food. Because he was excited, I think, Jesus the man, Jesus who was God, absolutely ebullient with the fact that something really spectacular was happening through that encounter.
In Samaria, of all places.
In Samaria. And they wanted to know what this food was. And that's where we learn, don't we, what is the ideal food for followers of Jesus.
Yeah.
And it's always a big moment when you learn something like
It
that.
is
And
really.
what was it
It
that
was
they learned?
my food is doing the will of my Father.
Yeah.
And that's what feeds all of us
Yeah.
when we're doing something and we know that it's something useful, I think.
It's not an easy thing, because all those other things, the prayer and Bible study, etc., those are crucial. But in the end, doing what you're told gives you muscle and strength. Well, we're going to come through this all in the end, and I hope some of the things we've learned about use of time, will survive. So, have a listen to this phone call.
Oh, is that Jesus? Oh, good. Jesus, don't come round tonight. Well, I'm busy at the hall, so chances of a chat with you are actually really rather small. Oh, you know, so many people need me. Can't deny them all. So, looks as if I won't be in if you decide to call. Oh, yeah, Tuesday would be better. But I think the man next door is looking very troubled, and I've helped him out before. Friend in need, something I can never quite ignore, so don't come round tomorrow night. You'll understand, I'm sure. Wednesday night, oh no, that's study group. Thursday, I'm away. Friday, oh no, Friday I've got tickets for the local Christian play, and Saturday's the mission, and that'll take all day, so better if we leave it now till Sunday night. Okay? Oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. Do you love me? Will you ever set me free? I've built myself a prison. No, I've thrown away the key. I'm weeping in the darkness. Yes, of course. I'm longing now to see the plans you have for both of us. Please come and visit me.
I hope he visits you. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.